Let's unbox the Vintage Collection 3.75-inch Dark Trooper Deluxe figure from The Mandalorian. Varykino. If it's Star Wars, we collect it. Hello there, thanks for visiting Varykino. At the recent San Diego Comic-Con, Hasbro revealed during their live stream and panel that they are finally returning to the backing card and bubble style for their deluxe 3.75-inch figures. I am really happy about. I did kind of miss that iconic vintage Kenner style backing card and clear window for the deluxe figures. So figures like the Dark Trooper didn't come in that packaging. As you can see, this one came in the plastic-free packaging era where we just have this opaque cardboard box without the character art. The images on these boxes are of the toy, not the character from the show. And I kind of hope that perhaps Hasbro will go through and repackage these ones, reissue them in the new packaging style so people can fill them out. Because generally speaking, these ones don't have a VC number either. And I think that that's a shame, especially for the completionists. So as you can see, I still have my Dark Trooper in its packaging. I've never seen this one in person because we have no preview window here. So I'm definitely keen to finally get this one out of the packaging. This is one I wanted to army build. They were harder to find here in New Zealand and a little bit on the pricier side, so I just have the one. Definitely keen if they reissue this in the future to grab a few more. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Coming up really soon, I'll open up the box, we'll get the figure out, check out all of the details, but first let's take one last look at this unique packaging. This Dark Trooper Deluxe figure was released during Hasbro's thankfully short-lived plastic-free packaging era, and I do kind of see what they were trying to achieve with this style of packaging, but personally I'm really happy that we're finally going to move back into the bubble backing card style for deluxe figures. For a little bit of comparison, I have a few other carded examples just to compare. We can see I have the Mandalorian here on a Mandalorian series backing card. Placing this one in front, we can see that they did try to keep the same packaging size and sort of dimensions here, and when we look at the logo, the chrome racetrack, it all looks the same, but there is something really missing. There's a few elements. The accent color behind the figure and the nameplate. We still have a nameplate, but no accent color, and clearly no bubble, so no accent color behind the figure either. And of course, we are missing the all-important character art down the side. We only have toy art on this packaging. Absolutely no pictures from the Mandalorian series of the Dark Troopers from the show. And I think that that is a real missed opportunity. Grabbing a modern deluxe bubble carded figure, also from the Mandalorian series, we can see that when we put them on a backing card with clear bubble, they are much wider, but I do prefer this style, even if it technically isn't the same sort of dimensions as these ones for the single figures. We've got the character art down the side, we've got the accent colors, and of course, we've got the same style of packaging, including the all-important VC number there at the top. Because if we look at the back of this one, we don't have a VC number, and I do think that that was kind of unusual, a choice from Hasbro, because of course I like to keep checklists, spreadsheets of my collectibles. I don't want to miss ones or lose track of my collection, and it's really hard to keep track of all of these ones when they don't have numbers. I really like how sort of systemized everything is in the Vintage Collection line, and I just really miss not having a character art there. We've got a nice clear image of the action figure in question posed with the accessories there. We've got a little bit of an insert shot there showing a few more of the accessories, and on the back we've got a nice clear image again with a bit of a nice white clear spread showing all of the pieces, the 3.75-inch scale figure, the sort of charging loading dock there. We've got a blaster rifle there, two additional hands, and those blast effects to attach to the feet, and the character art here on the back is just another same image there that we can see on the front of the toy itself. No actual art from the show, which I think is a real shame. We do have a couple of promo images again of the toy down the side. We can see doing that sort of robotic punching motion there, and on the side just a close-up of the face. I do really miss being able to see the character through the bubble. I myself am generally not a mint on card collector. I generally open most of mine with a few exceptions, but when it comes to this, it doesn't really look anything different. This could be an empty box, or it could still have the figure inside. I think it's a shame, and it definitely does miss that character art. So I'm really hoping, fingers crossed, that Hasbro will re-release this particular Dark Trooper figure on a deluxe backing card like this, or even so, we could still get it it in a standard card, just without all of these sort of extra accessories, because I really, really want to army build this one. So I really, really hope that they will just give us the Dark Trooper on a standard backing card with a VC number, perfect for collectors that are collecting the vintage collection line, mint on cards, so you can finally add this one to your collection, because these cards are just so iconic and they look awesome. But yeah, a little bit of a look at the packaging for this particular deluxe figure. Very glad this is going to be the end of this line. We're not going to get the style of packaging anymore. But in all that being said, let's finally open this one up. So I've just snipped the sellotape here on the side so that I can open this flap from the side there. There's always a little bit of a wrinkle. So I'm expecting similar packaging to some of the other plastic-free packaging deluxe figures. So we can see we have a cardboard tray with a little slot here holding the figure, and we've got a brown sort of paper, thick cardboard little envelope for the accessories. So I'm hoping he might just slip out. They always look a little bit wonky when they're in these plastic-free packaging trays. They're not sort of posed very well. He's a little bit caught on something here. I'm hoping he'll just slide out. There we go. So yes, I'm going to straighten the legs and all of those articulated points there, but he looks pretty cool. He doesn't look broken. That's always a bit of a anxious moment for me opening up these deluxe figures. I really hope that everything's okay inside the box. So just going to pop him down and let's take a closer look at the envelope here of accessories. This one is actually sellotaped closed. I thought we might get some of the sort of the waxy accessory envelopes that we get in the Black series. So, oh, okay. The parts are all disassembled, and we've got a few sections there. We've got some very small parts in here as well. Oh, okay, we've got a lot of little components. There's a lot more going on. We've got these parts that I guess I'm going to have to assemble onto that sort of charging dock there. We've got and the flame effects and the blaster, and we've got one hand there and the other hand here. So let's clear this packaging away so we can assemble the accessories and check out all of the details. So now I have the Dark Trooper and all of the deluxe accessories out of the packaging so we can go over through everything. I was kind of surprised. I don't know why that this was disassembled. I don't know why I thought it would come in sort of one just big plastic block. Thankfully though, there are actually assembly instructions. We can see that we're going to have the swappable hands. We'll be able to put the blaster rifle on the thigh there, and some nice diagrams showing how we're going to be able to assemble that sort of loading bay and how you can sort of army build if you want to buy more. So really happy to have that. So before I start assembling everything, I just want to go over this figure because this is the first time that I finally got my hands on it, seeing it in person. And I have to say, the first thing that struck me were the red eyes. They obviously look really red in all of the packaging, but we've got that kind of old school Jawa action figure thing going on here, where we've got this clear, translucent red plastic that goes all the way through. So the lights, well, the eyes look like they've got lights in them because we're getting light through the back here. So a little bit inaccurate from the back, but I think the red eyes look really fun with that sort of glowing effect rather than being painted red. To be honest, I was really expecting just painted red eyes. So I think that that's kind of fun. A little bit tricky if you have a little bit of a darker display space. You might sort of want to put some LED lights somewhere near this guy to sort of really get that glowing red eye effect. He looks really glossy and black, which I think was really fun. He's got such a menacing black gloss in the show, so I'm glad that we've got a lot of gloss there. We do have some painted elements, of course. We've got some little red dots here on the chest there, and we've got some silver elements here on the biceps and on the forearms here, just at the top. Some of the silver kind of looks like a glossy sort of shine highlights on the black as well. And predominantly a lot of silver sort of circles there on all of these sort of droid joints. So we can see those here, especially here at the knees and there at the ankles as well. So overall, pretty simple in terms of the paint. We've got nothing here on the back, and that's just that clear red sort of translucent plastic going through there. So some very small elements painted details at the joins and a few there on the arms and chest. I do have to say though, getting this one out of the packaging, I was kind of surprised with how, I don't want to say spindly, but it kind of reminds me of battle droids. And I know that we've got a much smaller joins at sort of the articulation points on droids compared to human characters, but I did have quite a time trying to sort of get him sturdy enough to stand up. And something I've found with some of the modern Hasbro 3.75-inch figures, the pegs that we generally think of in all of our action figures to put on the stands, you know, I've got lots and lots of clear plastic stands for all of my figures. The new ones have smaller holes, so they don't fit on my clear plastic stands. I'm going to have to hunt around and see if there are any of those sort of third-party manufacturers that have made stands that fit the new modern Hasbro figures with these slightly smaller holes. On the underside, we can see that this particular figure actually has 2 small holes. I believe the ones at the back are for, as we would usually put them on stands, and this one here is for the flame effect, the sort of the rocket boost accessories that we have over there. So I'll definitely attach those ones later. I do have to say though, these have, and it's a little bit hard to show, they have the sort of notch on the plastic that I often find on the Black Series lightsaber blades. And I find these particular little notches, once they click in, they are really hard to remove. So I think that that's kind of interesting. So I'm definitely going to test them out, but I'm worried they're going to be really tight to get out, considering that once you've got them on there, you cannot stand them up anymore. You're going to have to sort of suspend them with fishing line. It's more of a play feature, really, you know, to sort of fly them around, sort of kidnapping a Grogu on Tython or something like that. So I'm not really going to utilize these as an adult collector, not unless I'm able to army build this particular figure, because I want to have him in a sort of, to do a bit of a corridor scene with the Mandalorian and Gideon and Luke Skywalker and all of that kind of stuff. So I am a little bit annoyed that he doesn't fit my plastic stands. I'm going to have to search them out because he is a little bit wobbly, which I kind of wasn't expecting. I was kind of expecting him to sort of have the heft of, say, a Ned B sort of figure, something with a real sort of bulk to it. But it's given me sort of Super Battle Droid sort of vibes, quite sort of top heavy and a little bit thinner in the legs. And in trying to pose him, I feel like a lot of the joints, they feel kind of rubbery, which I was not expecting. He kind of wants to snap back in a lot of the movements. If I bend him, he just kind of slowly moves back. It sort of feels, I don't know why it feels rubbery, but it does. It's kind of, I thought it would all be just really hard plastic. There would be some real sort of clicks and everything to that. I do get a little bit more of sort of the click at the knees and at the ankles. We've got a little bit of a, I don't know if that's a scratch or silver paint, to be honest, there just on that calf. It's still just the way it's catching the light. That might be paint. It's a little bit hard to see now that I was like looking at the lower gap there. So nice good clicks to the ankles, and the knees, but that knee is actually very stiff. I'm just moving through the articulation because, oh man, that knee is really stiff. I don't like it when it's stiff because I feel like I'm going to bend the attachment point. That one was a lot. Oh, there we go. Finally. So I can get the knees to about there before we're going to get these points here touching, and it's not going to go back any further. But generally speaking, this figure is going to be a straight-legged one, I think, to try and keep him sort of in a pose. And of course, now that I've been playing around with his legs, he's probably not going to stand up very well. There's something about the joints at the hips. They're just, you can see I've got the swivel there that's sort of hidden underneath the sort of thigh armor. I know it's a droid, so it's not armor per se, but you can kind of see the movement there so that we've got that attachment point. So we can swivel the thighs around, but the articulation at the hip, it just kind of feels like I'm flexing the plastic, not actually moving the leg. it doesn't really want to move that much, and I feel just like I'm bending some rubbery plastic, which is a little bit odd. Of course, I wanted to see how well we can move, because of course there's that iconic sort of movement when they are sort of ramming the door with their fists, because we do have actual sort of fist accessory hands, so we can sort of do this movement. And this is nice. He actually holds the pose. He doesn't snap back either, which I like. Some figures you kind of bend them to here and they immediately want to snap back into place, so I'm glad about that. And we can even get quite a lot of movement front and back, but overall the joints at these hips just feel loose, but then sort of rubbery. It's really hard to describe. I thought it would be a lot sturdier, and because the balance of this is resting on those thighs, this is going to be quite a job to kind of get him to stand upright, because he's very top heavy with this sort of bulk. And you can see I'm going to have quite a job trying to get this guy to stand up for my display, because these legs, they just snap back straight away. I feel like I can get it to go forward a little bit, and it's a bit weird. I do like all the sculpting and detail. There's just a lot going on here, and it plays with the eyes a little bit because it's all just so glossy and shiny. I do really like the look and finish of this figure. It looks really cool. Those huge big shoulders. So let's test out the arms. So I don't know that we're necessarily going to get much in the way of lift, maybe? I thought those shoulder plates might get in the way, but we can actually get the arms quite high. So on the other side, a little bit stiffer, not getting quite as high on that side, a little bit lowered there. I feel like that one's hitting, but they look like they're symmetrically sculpted, so I'm not quite sure what that one is. I've got a little bit of extra plastic here that I might need to trim off. You can kind of see it here. I've got these little extra plastic bits that I can flick with my nail, and I don't think they're supposed to be there. Again, one of the reasons why I don't like the deluxe figures. Not that I'd necessarily be able to see that in a bubble card, you know, when you've got the clear plastic, small imperfections kind of get a little bit lost. But yeah, definitely probably have to go in with a small pair of scissors or an X-Acto knife and trim that off, because that just it doesn't look like that's supposed to be there. It's just kind of flicking over the shoulders, especially when I look at this side and that is not there. But I do really like the gloss of the shoulders and the chest. Obviously very sort of Vader inspired, with the sort of menacing black. And I like all the sort of all of the details through the torso here. It's kind of interesting that I can't really move it at this attachment point, that the movement is at the sort of upper chest part like we see in a lot of figures. We've sort of got these little tubes and bits sticking up and all of the details. It's kind of interesting that we've still got sort of elements that remind me of Stormtrooper armor, like the sort of drop boxes and the sort of thermal detonator part here on the back, and some of the details that we get in sort of the chest plate on the back of Stormtroopers. Because yes, early generations of Dark Troopers were actual sort of troopers wearing armor. Of course, this is one of the first robotic versions of Dark Troopers. So overall, I'm kind of, it's a curious experience unboxing figures you haven't seen in person. There's a lot to be sort of excited about. You're finally getting a figure in your hands, getting to check out all of the details, but he just didn't feel quite as sturdy as I was expecting for such sort of a figure that feels like it's like looking at Dark Troopers. They have that heavy metallic clunk when they move, when they sort of walk and sort of stomp and do all of that kind of stuff. So I don't know, it's probably the sound effects on the show make me feel like this should be sort of a sturdy, hefty figure. Of course, this is 3.75 inch range. I'm probably going to find a bit more of that heft with a Black Series version of this figure, but there's just something about it that just felt a little bit bendy. Just with the way, and sort of rubbery with the way that these sort of legs feel. I can actually get a lot more articulation this way. You can see that they actually hold their positions that way. And I generally don't have too much need to be bending character figures like this. Not unless they're riding a creature, and that's probably not going to be the case with my Dark Trooper. But there we go. We can see that we've got an attachment point here on the thigh because, as the instructions show, we'll be able to attach the blaster rifle on the thigh, especially when they're doing the sort of the ramming motion with the closed fists. So I particularly always get really nervous pulling the hands out of figures, especially in the 3.75-inch line. The attachment points on these are very, very small and quite long, so there's a lot to grip there. You've got to be really careful, especially pushing them in. I'm always worried that something's going to happen and they're going to go in a little bit askew. And we've even got a little bit of articulation. It feels like these have, they're sculpted to look like articulation, but I don't know if they actually move. Well, they're just straight. I think these are just straight. I was a little bit, I don't know if I'm just bending it or, oh no, there we go. Okay, very stiff and a little bit hard to do the articulation point when I don't have much of a grip, but yes. So there is actually 2 pieces of plastic here. We've got a little bit of articulation going there. So again, trying to push in that peg and not have that kind of move or potentially snap off, those are the sort of things that make me a little bit worried. So before we go and swap the hands, let's just test out the blaster rifle, because of course this is not a standard E11 like we see with a lot of stormtroopers. This one is quite unique. We've got a very small grip here and we've got this attachment point there. It's really quite fun. It just, again, just glossy black all over, no paintwork. Really fun though. So just going to see how well he's going to hold it, because we do have a trigger finger that's very extended. We don't have a trigger guard on this particular blaster rifle, so it's very, he does hold it fairly easily because that is such a small little grip. I just move that other hand, and there we go. I just dropped it for a minute. Yeah, so that grip is really small. This is definitely going to be one of those blasters. I'm going to be quite paranoid about, you know, accidentally falling out of this action figure hands over time. It's kind of sturdy once it's really in there, but it doesn't take much for that to come out because there's not really that much of a grip. So I'm just going to test, because that looks like a fairly decent length on attachment point there. So I'm going to see how well we can sort of attach it, because I'm hoping it'll just kind of click on. So based on the instructions, it looks like we've got it pointing down there against the leg, like we would expect, so that the grip is at the top. So I'm going to try and, it's all shiny black on black. Let's see how well. Is this going to like click in? It's kind of rubbery. When I'm pressing it in, I'm kind of making it a little bit curved, and it just kind of wants to spring back out. It doesn't click in. You can kind of see it just raising back up there, and it just, so it's not really, it doesn't sort of click into place. It is holding reasonably well, and it looks pretty cool on the leg. It's not going to come off. It might be one of those ones that just sort of slowly creeps over time. Oh, that feels better now. Just sort of really giving it a good push, and that holds there. So that looks pretty good. Looks like a, like not quite the same black finish as the thigh, but it does blend in there pretty nicely. So happy with that. Do kind of wish the grip was a little bit bigger, but I know Hasbro does try to be accurate to the on-screen accessories. So next up, I'm going to try pulling these hands off, and I do get really anxious about this. There's always that just fear in the back of my mind that something will break. These are really small attachment points, and the hands themselves, you're generally sort of gripping like this, and he's got all of these extended fingers, which are a little bit harder to kind of grasp. I'm pressing up against this finger here, so just going to see how well are they going to pop out. I also just don't want to pop off like a joint that's not supposed to come out. And I don't, wow, that's really in there. Think it's slowly coming? Why do they make them so stiff if we're designed to take them apart? It's like the swappable helmet heads on a lot of the modern Mandalorian figures. Maybe this one will pop out better. That's really starting to hurt my hands. Those are really in there. This is going to take me a moment. Wow, that's absolutely hurting my thumb. So my husband and I just spent a few minutes. We managed to get one of the hands off, this one here. So this one is not budging. It's probably going to have to be done with the sort of hot water trick to try and loosen up the plastic a little bit. But honestly, that seems like a bit of a design flaw. I know they have to be sort of secure on there, but if fans are supposed to disassemble this figure, as is clearly shown in the instructions, we can see that we're going to take the hands off and swap them over. It should be easier. These toys, it says, for ages 4 and up. There is no way a child is able to get this off because the two of us cannot do it. It could just be this specific one. I know every now and again there's just an extra sort of fraction of a piece of plastic that just makes things fit a little bit tighter, but that was really starting to hurt our hands. And of course, because these hands are articulated, and even the articulation points on these are quite stiff, you've just got to be careful because you don't want to break the joins, because then you've got two separate broken pieces of plastic that are not going to work anymore. So we've decided that we want to display our Dark Trooper holding the blaster. So just for sort of just demonstration purposes, we're going to put one of the punching hands in here on this hand. So hopefully putting it in is going to be a little bit easier than taking it out. So you can see popping that in there, and hopefully I've got the right hand on this right arm, and hopefully this one will actually go in, because you can see the sort of the thick attachment point part. That's the problem that's pushing in there. And there we go. Okay, so that one did actually go in, and we can see that cool sort of clenched fist, so we can punch the walls. But yeah, the hands do look a lot smaller, I have to say, when they're sort of clenched up. It does kind of end up looking a little bit tiny for the scale of the arms there. So I do like the open hands. They just look a little bit bigger, a little bit more sort of proportional to the body. And just for, because these ones are clenched, I'm wondering if these ones are a little bit easier to grip and pull out, especially since I only just put this one in. Let's see if I can actually pull this one out. Okay, so I was able to get that one out. So I'm going to see if I can get this one in and put him back into his original pose. There we go. Phew, okay. So there we go. We can put the hands on for sort of the punching motion, but personally, if a character figure comes with accessories, I like to have them holding their weapon, lightsaber, blaster, and that sort of stuff. So of course, the other accessory to go through is the flames on the underside here. So we've got the attachment points. I'm a little bit anxious about these sort of little catchment points here. I'm hoping that they won't be as hard to get off as the hands. Oh, that's going to be hard. Okay, a little bit of a wiggle and I can get that one in. And let's do the other one. That one's very stiff. Kind of goes in there. That was quite a push. And I know if you're flying around the living room with your action figures, they need to be sort of held in place a little bit. And I gotta say, they do look pretty cool. It's a bit tricky doing the whole sort of suspending your action figures in a flying mode. They do look pretty cool. I like the flame effects. I am a fan of flame effects of jetpacks and things like that. So I do understand Hasbro including them. That was a pretty iconic scene where they were rocketing up from Tython, having captured Grogu in that episode, The Tragedy. But now I can't stand him up anymore. Not that I was having a fantastic time actually trying to get him to stand on his feet anyway, but you can see. I like that we've got them here for the options, especially if you end up buying a few of them. You can have some standing, you can have some flying, you can have some punching a door. I like the options there, so they look pretty cool. Nice translucent. We've got a little bit of a sort of a tapering off in the plastic. I think that's more just because they're getting thinner. I don't think there is actually any sort of color gradient other than the fact that it's just the thickness of the plastic being thicker here. So we've got a deeper sort of hue of color tapering through to sort of a more translucent end here. But I'm going to see. Okay. Wow. That was actually not as bad as I was fearing. This one was the harder one to get in. I think. There we go. Phew. Okay, so those weren't nearly as bad as the lightsaber pigs that I've come across recently. I was a little bit worried about that. So now I've got him back in his original standing form. Definitely going to take a little bit of work. As you can see, he's just going to keep falling over. But now we've got the really exciting sort of a deluxe components here. So looking at all of these pieces, I'm definitely going to be following the instructions because I do not want to assemble this up the wrong way. This looks asymmetrical. We've got two big pigs there. We've got these sort of double pigs over here. We've got some details here on this end, and then the sides, they look, yes, they are. There is a left and a right because we've got these sort of details here at the top. So I'm hoping that they are going to, oh, they're identical, aren't they? They're just made the same like that, and then we're going to be able to assemble them. So I'm hoping there might be some pictures on the instruction guide. Might help us. So we've got the detail for the main panel is at the top, and then it looks like we've got the little circle and the little rectangle on these outer sides. So when we look at it from the side, the little rectangles are on the inside and the outside. So, and then we've got these sort of little cable tube parts that are gonna connect there. Definitely very, very helpful having an instruction manual. When I saw all the pieces, I was a little bit panicked because I hate the idea of putting things together wrong. So let's get this together. So it looks like this one's gonna be on this side. We can see that we've got these parts look like they're gonna go around these little pieces here, and I'm hoping that this will actually all click together. Not too difficult, because I don't know why I was expecting this to be fully assembled. So I'm going to try this side. This is going to be a trick, isn't it? It's going to be, okay, this one's actually clicking on. Okay, that one just clicked on. What is going on this side? This one was going on very, very stiff. Okay. Let me know in the comments if anyone's found this to be quite asymmetrical in terms of assembly. That one just doesn't want to go on. I'm doing something wrong here. So finally got that second panel on. I was not expecting this to be so difficult. I thought they would just sort of snap together in a way that I could take it apart. I do understand why there is asymmetry, because as on the diagram, if you buy multiples, you can kind of put them together and you only need one wall in between each one. You don't need to sort of assemble them like this and then put them beside each other, so you can sort of connect them all together, which I think is kind of fun there if you like to build up scenes. So just going to go over the details here. We've got some fantastic surface details, and there is some painting. Looking at the red here, it's kind of got like a metallic red finish to it. It's kind of speckly, which I really wasn't expecting. I thought that it would just be a flat red. I really like that. So looking at it from this perspective, like we see in the instructions and on the box, we can see that we've sort of got that box detail here and on the side. So if we had lots lined up, they would all look the same, which is quite nice. So we've got these details here on the back as well. I was kind of expecting it to just be a flat back. We couldn't see that in the box. We've got the details there on the inside. And it's even sculpted on the back, which is kind of fun. We've got these two holes because, of course, we've got these little sort of peg attachment points here, which are sort of going to pinch and fit through. And then we've got these. So according to the instructions, very grateful to have these instructions, we're going to put them in so that the hooks are facing up. And they appear to be completely identical, just a little bit of asymmetry just because they are sort of small, slightly flexible kind of pieces. So this one's slightly bigger, this one's slightly smaller. It doesn't appear, they look identical on the instructions. So the last piece I've got to assemble on this, hopefully it is not going to be that complicated. So I'm just going to have to sort of squeeze these and put them through. And of course, it's going to fight me as well. This has been a really interesting unboxing. I was not expecting this to be that much of a complicated jigsaw puzzle. Honestly, I would not be giving this to children and expecting them to put this together. That is actually really tight plastic. It's taking a lot of force to sort of even squeeze those pegs together. And there we go. Got that one through. We can see how much that's sticking there from the back. And we can see we've got that sort of tube there. I'm kind of hoping that this is actually going to do a fairly good job, while I try and get this one through on this side, of holding the Dark Trooper up, because he's a little bit flimsy. See if I can get this through. That is, it's so skinny, you can't sort of push against it because this just bends. It's quite a job. You've got to sort of, I'm trying to pinch these together with my nails, but it's actually really stiff plastic. So I finally have this all assembled, and for such a small accessory component, these little sort of black tubes here are just, honestly, they're confusing, and the instructions really don't help. Looking at the back of the box, I could see that they both point inwards, which I didn't notice at first when I was double checking, because you can sort of pose them facing out, but they do very subtly lean inwards towards the figure. And the instruction diagram is even further confusing. We can see them kind of on the outside of the figure, looping around the arm. And when I actually tried to do that, it kind of ends up really stretching these out to the sides in a way that feels like I'm going to break it. And it also kind of lifts the figure up, so he's kind of askew and sort of held in position. And very quickly watching the episode where we see these Dark Troopers deployed, we can see that the hoses attach to the chest, not the arms or anything like that, as this diagram would suggest, because the pictures look like those hoses are attached at the arms because they're hooking around the outside of the arms. So for me personally, completing it as the instructions have, with the hoses pointing inwards and knowing on the show that they are supposed to attach to the chest, this is the way that I have decided that I'm going to put him in there. It is a little bit tricky because he's got those sort of drop boxes, the sort of rectangles hanging off the belt section in the back. They kind of want to hook on this a lot, so even just getting him in there is a little bit of a job. It kind of supports his weight, and they're not really at the right level. When I stand everything up, you can see it's kind of attaching a little bit low, and I know it's black on black, but the hoses are here, and we can see they're not really coming up to the chest. There's like a few sort of sculpted attachment points, and if I sort of move that down, that kind of looks like that hose would attach to that point like I would expect, but you can see how much further down the feet go. So to be honest, they're kind of a bit of a gimmick, and I don't think they're really necessary, just because of how fussy it is trying to get this figure in and out and just getting them assembled and everything like that. Obviously they do cover up the holes in the back, but honestly the holes are pretty much behind the figure. So all in all, this has been quite an adventure. I thought, perhaps a bit naively, that this would be assembled in the box. I would just sort of get it out, everything would be good. He would just click in there. But yeah, assembling it, every little component was fighting me. Everything just was giving me a hard time at trying to assemble it. And now I finally have it all together. I will say, under these lights, it is a little bit, even under these bright lights, he does kind of disappear once you put him into the black. Something about sort of having those sides around him, it kind of makes him really menacing, but we also, because this comes up a little bit here at the top, we lose the light coming in through that plastic sort of section there to sort of really illuminate the eyes. So we do lose a little bit of an effect. I will say, I'm kind of glad that this is sturdy. We don't have a base plate or anything to it. It is open, but it does actually work pretty well in helping this figure stand up. So that is something to be said for that as well. Overall, I was not expecting to kind of have to really fight and struggle with this unboxing. I always have a lot of fun with my unboxings. Sometimes you have, you know, a flaw, a scratch, something that's just a little bit amiss, but overall it's still fun. This one, from the arms not coming out, the attachment points of this being a little bit rough to put together, getting those hoses in place, and then finally just trying to figure out how to pose the figure in this accessory. It was all just, sometimes you need just a little bit more clear instructions, or perhaps more accurately described instructions, because that just would not work. I ended up sort of splaying those hoses out to the side, trying to wrap around the figure. If I actually take the figure out of this, and it's a little bit of a trick because he catches on everything, You can see just how narrow they are. There is no way I am fitting the whole Dark Trooper, arms included, between them, because it pushes this out all the way out to the sides. And these are, I feel like you could snap them. They are brittle plastic. They bend because they're thin, not because they're rubbery. And I really don't want to snap those off because they are supposed to be there. They do look kind of cool once you get the figure in the place. And I do like all the details on this. I do understand why this particular figure was a deluxe figure. This is a reasonable amount of plastic. We've got all of these other accessory components, the swappable hands, the flame effects. So I do think this is a much worthy of the deluxe price tag than say some of those Mandalorian figures where we get a jetpack and a flame effect, and that's, you know, the extra sort of accessories that we get there. So, but it's just been an interesting experience putting this one together, I will say that. And I think as helpful as it is to get him to stand up in there, I do like the way that he looks out. Just something about having those red eyes. You just lose that effect once you sort of enclose him in and you have that sort of black plastic behind him. You completely lose the cool red eyes. Of course, you don't see that in the back, but if you've got him on your shelf, it just looks cool. So there we go. Now I have my Dark Trooper figure posed holding the blaster rifle in two hands, and I really like this pose. It did take a little bit of tweaking. The joints on the arms were a little bit stiff, but we can get all of the classic articulation to get the arms moving in towards the center line of the body for a nice two-handed grip there. And I think it just looks right for the Dark Trooper to hold it in two hands. And tweaking the legs a little bit, I also got him to a sturdy standing pose there. So I think for me personally, this is how I'm going to display my particular Dark Trooper figure, with the two-handed holding pose there with the blaster rifle, not the clenched fist for punching the wall, no flame effects, not with the blaster rifle on at the leg, and I'm definitely going to keep him out of the loading bay. Don't get me wrong, after all of that fuss, I do really like this accessory piece. I think it looks kind of cool beside him, like he has just loaded out, because when he's tucked inside, we lose that cool sort of glowing eyes effect. Obviously, there is no LEDs in there, but that old school plastic trick really just sort of adds a little bit of an extra sort of presence and menace to this figure. Those red eyes are so central to the look of this figure. I think it is a really clever sort of low-tech way of doing that cool effect in the eyes. So much cooler than painted eyes. So overall, it was a bit of an adventure, but I do really like this particular figure. Once I sort of figured out all of the quirks and eccentricities about this particular figure, especially putting together the accessory pieces. All said and done, I do really like it. I really hope to be able to pick up more, to be honest. One thing I thought was interesting that wasn't clear on the outside of the box was the fact that you can assemble multiple of these accessory sort of charging ports together. They all connect together, that you could see on the instruction sheet that wasn't evident on the outside of the box. I thought if you bought multiples, you just simply sit them beside each other. I thought it was really interesting that you can connect them all up. And I think that is a particular selling point that is missed on the outside of the box. So personally, I think I might be tracking down more of this figure. And of course, I do still hope that Hasbro reissues just this figure without all of the accessory parts on a backing card for fans who like to keep mint on card examples and army building them for sort of hallway scenes and that, where we don't need these extra accessory pieces. So this was an interesting unboxing. That is always part of the adventure of filming unboxings in real time, different to opening things up, checking them all out, and then filming a review once you've gone through all of the details. You're kind of figuring things out in real time, and that's quite an adventure in this particular case. It's always fun, never sure what I'm going to find with these plastic-free packaging figures. It's always a little bit of an adventure opening them up and figuring them out. But overall, this guy looks cool. I like the Dark Trooper. I think they're so menacing. They were such a crucial component of the Mandalorian series. I hope we see more of them. It just looks cool. I've got that small little floor down on the side leg there. So if I buy more, maybe this guy will be in the back, but at least I can't see it from the front, and I'll probably soon forget about it once it's on display. Just the coolness of this character and those menacing eyes is definitely going to distract me from that. So there we go. This was an interesting one, but I'm really happy to have this figure in my collection. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today as I opened up another another Star Wars collectible and had some interesting fun. I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon or evening wherever you are in the galaxy, and let's hang out again very soon for more Star Wars fun. May the Force be with you. If you're a TVC fan, I recently unboxed the Captain Enoch and Thrawn's Night Trooper 4-pack of figures. That video is linked here in case you haven't already seen it, as well as our whole vintage collection playlist. This is the way.